I've got expansion on my mind. I have a room full of people, and I have people watching the replay on the YouTubes or from an email. So good to be with you. My name's Erik Hatch of Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching, located out of Fargo, North Dakota. And we are so excited to talk about expansion today. This is one of those topics that has been sexy before. I haven't heard it talked about much, and I feel like there's a number of things we need to cover, a number of things that we need to knock out to make sure that those of you that are doing expansion do it right, and those of you that are considering expansion, you understand what is at risk with all this. I'll give you a brief summary of what we do and who we are. We're located out of Fargo, North Dakota, and I currently am the CEO of both Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching. Hatch Realty is a brokerage that functions solely as a team. We don't have any independent agents. Everybody functions in the team system, and we are operating out of 4 offices right now. We have our main hub in Fargo, North Dakota, and we've now expanded to 3 other spots. We've gone up to Grand Forks, North Dakota, that's 70 miles away. We've gone to Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, 45 minutes east, and we've gone to Bismarck, North Dakota, 200 miles west. I also have expanded previously to Minneapolis, Minnesota, about a 230-mile trip, and also to the oil patch of Western North Dakota, about 5.5 hours away. I've done a lot with expansion, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. And I want to hopefully give you the best summary of what you need to look for as you decide to move forward with this. If you are currently doing expansion right now and you have some things to share to this conversation and you're watching live, please post it in the chat box or the Q&A portion. I'll want to include some of your thoughts in this because my thoughts are only what I know, and some of you that are doing this maybe have some insight that I don't. So I wanna cover this. We're gonna go about 45 minutes here, so thanks in advance for your time. And if you have questions at any moment whatsoever, if you're watching live, please throw them my way so we can be interactive and not just presentational. Here's the gang. Here's the gist: is expansion was sexy. I don't know if expansion is sexy anymore. I think Keller Williams was really the hottest commodity, the hottest people on expansion. And please, this is nothing to do with any brokerages. I used to be a KW agent. I have mad love for KW, and KW pushed expansion really hard about 5 years ago or so. Those of you that are in the KW world or used to be in the KW world, you maybe remember when that was a part of the conversation. Expansion seemed sexy because it was all about creating lots of opportunity in other places. And in theory, it works, but so does communism. You know, in theory, jumping to other markets has advantageous opportunities on it. But there are some major stresses that it puts on your infrastructure, and it oftentimes leads to those people in expansion markets really being a little bit shorted because we haven't yet figured out our stuff. I will say this. If you're considering expansion, you need to have a solid foundation first. That's step number 1. You need to have a solid foundation. What does that solid foundation look like? What does that mean? Number 1 is I think that you need to have a business that has a fair amount of market share. Now, if you're in a major metro, let's say you're in Houston, Texas, I think Houston is the 4th biggest city in the United States. Houston or Atlanta, I get those mixed up. But let's say you're in a major metro like that. How many transactions do you have to do in order to capture like a 2% market share? See, I think you're going to have to capture, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 transactions to have a 2% market share. That's a really big amount of places to expand to. But look at in Houston, like you could be located in the northern suburbs and you would actually have to expand to the southern or the eastern or the western suburbs. Those are expansion offices. That's one way to consider expansion. And it's one way to consider your foundation is, do you have good stability in your own home market? Might I say that you shouldn't consider expansion. This is an Erik Hatch rule. This is not like an overall rule from other people. You should have at least 300 transactions a year at your home base. I think that beyond that, you're going to see that growth sometimes gets a little more complicated. Another way to put it is you should have at least 15 or so people on your team, because I think there's opportunity at your home base before you decide to go and spread out to elsewhere. Spreading to elsewhere limits and pulls your resources, especially you as the rainmaker, and it leaves you in a hurt bag. Now, remember, I said that we have to have a solid foundation. And so my rule of thumb would be you have to have at least 300 transactions and or at least 15 people in your organization. On top of that, you have to have a really dialed in CRM, something that is repeatable and duplicatable. Beyond that, I think it's going to be imperative that you have business in that next market. See, one of the reasons why you should look to expand in the first place is because there's opportunity in those markets that you're missing out on. I'll give you an example. Grand Forks, North Dakota. Again, I'm in Fargo. Grand Forks is 70 miles to the north of us. That community in total is probably 100,000 people or so. And we were sending, I don't know, 12 or 15 referrals a year up to Grand Forks. And we get paid 25% on that, which was well and good. But frankly, some of the advertising that I do in Fargo, radio and TV and that sort, carries up to Grand Forks. We have clients relocating up there. We have some military bases that we tend to do some frequent business with. And so because we already had a demand in that market, that said, that was more advantageous. Again, that's that foundational piece of making sure that there's demand in another place. I think it's really easy to try to jump to a place and say, this place looks great. It's a hot market. We're going to make it work. But as I'm going to show you over the next little while, there are some steps you're going to have to take. Step number one is have the right foundation. So you need to have something that is a home base that's solid. You then need to have a market that has demand for you already. How many deals, how many referrals are you sending to that market? I can tell you that Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, we were sending 15 or 20 referrals a year. The Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, we were sending 15 or 20 referrals a year. Now, I mean, not all of them with cash, but we had a lot of people that were transferring and relocating. And that's when it started to make good sense to look at that as an opportunity. So that's the foundation. I want to cover the who, what, where, when, and why of expansion. So again, those of you taking notes, here's where we're going, but we are not going to go in order of who, what, where, when, and why. We need to start with why. Okay, Simon Sinek talks about starting with why. He has books on it. He has a famous TED Talk on it. We need to say wholeheartedly right now, why are you considering expansion? Take a deep breath. Why are you considering expansion? Is it because you have tons of opportunity? Is it because you want to grow? Is it because you want to earn more cash? All those things are sexy and good and fun and solid. I think it needs to be more than that, though. I mean, why do you want to expand? It's hopefully to make an impact in other places. Because if your motivation is money, it's going to be a fleeting flight risk, and you're going to have to go years of investment in order to get that to actually churn for you. So ask yourself the question first, why do you want to expand? And I'm gonna call you out right now because I'm only calling myself out. Ego is a very big part of expansion. It is a huge part of expansion. As a guy that's expanded, I'm now in my second effort in Grand Forks. I want to tell you my expansion story. I got into real estate full-time in 2011, was an agent with Keller Williams. That first year I sold 52 houses, had a great first year. And so I did what everybody else did. And I started a team because I thought that was the natural next growth step. And I started a team. I then went to family reunion 2 months after that. And I remember seeing a guy named Ben Kinney on stage. A lot of you know Ben, either personally or you know at least his persona. Ben's an unbelievable guy and a really powerful agent. So Ben talks about how he's expanding. And I'm like, I want to be Ben. I want to do what Ben does. I want to have that success. And so within 6 months of me having a team and 18 months in total of me being a full-time realtor, I had expanded to 2 different markets. Market number one is I expanded up to Grand Forks, North Dakota. I found an agent that I liked, that I had done a deal with the previous year because he served both markets. And I created a value proposition for him to come on board, and he did. I was actually really surprised by it. He went from another national brokerage, I think at that time he was with Berkshire Hathaway, and came to work with me on my team. I then had a gal. I used to do youth ministry. She was a gal that was in my youth group and now was living in Grand Forks, and I had her start with me. So I had an awesome start. I had 2 actually really good people. That was expansion effort number one. Expansion effort number two is we were calling some old leads. We were using Tiger Leads. If you ever used Tiger Leads before, it means you've been in the business for a while. But Tiger Leads was around before Boomtown and Sync and Sierra and Firepoint and all that. And we went out to Western North Dakota. Literally, Fargo is on the eastern border of North Dakota. We are practically Minnesota. In fact, I can see Minnesota from my house, just like Sarah Palin can see Russia from Alaska. But seriously, my backyard is the river and I can see Minnesota. So with that being said, we are far away from the oil boom of Western North Dakota. And we were calling around to some old Tiger Leads that I had purchased for my team. We found somebody that was looking to buy a house in Fargo. They wanted to pay cash for a house. And we're like, that's awesome. And they wanted like a $300,000 house. And back in 2012, that was a whole lot of cash. I mean, it still is now, but you know, those were deals that you just salivate at. And so sure enough, we sold that person a house. And then she said, you know what? My boyfriend has a trucking company up in Crosby, North Dakota, right by Williston. It's almost the northwestern corner of the state. And North Dakota is a big state, so we're spread out pretty far. He has a trucking company he wants to sell. Do you guys want to sell it? And so my answer was, yeah, sure. And there's a moral to this story. Please write this down. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So we went up to Western North Dakota. I had been to Western North Dakota in high school, probably traveling there for sports or something. But I had not been there since the oil boom happened and the town was taken over. I showed up in a polo shirt like I'm wearing today and khakis, and I looked like I was wearing a tuxedo, and everybody else was in cut off jean shorts. And yeah, it was a different kind of world. We went up to this trucking company. The guy's name is James, and James has a tattoo across his neck that says pain. And we're introduced to James, and his girlfriend is Jean, the one we just sold a place to in Fargo. And so we meet James for the first time, and he shows us around, and he has like 20 acres of land. He has a trucking company with 30 rigs. He has housing for all these people, and housing up in Western North Dakota was so hard to come by. On top of that, he has 40 or 50 trucks. And we value this entire package at $20 million. Remind you, I'm in the business for 18 months full time. I hadn't stepped foot in Western North Dakota in about 15 years. It's about 5.5 hours from our hub in Fargo. And that previous year, I had sold 52 homes. I had no base, no foundation. And then this guy had the name Payne tattooed across his neck, and I earned his business. And so we find ways to market it. And I'm now traveling around the country to these different like oil boom seminars, trying to find somebody to do it. We pick up another business that we're trying to sell in Western North Dakota for $8.5 million. They're manufacturing fiberglass tanks that hold water for the fracking process. So now I'm representing $28.5 million worth of business, and I haven't even sold $20.5 million worth of real estate in my entire career. Let me just fast forward and save you some of the gory details. James, here's the story that appears in the newspaper after the Attorney General of North Dakota calls me personally. It says, Erik, I see that you have a business relationship with James. I'm wondering if you know his location. I said, I have no idea where he is. He hasn't responded to my phone calls in 3 weeks. And sure enough, in the newspaper a couple weeks later, it says James of Crosby, North Dakota, arrested. He had shot somebody. He was a felon, so you can't have a gun. You probably can't shoot somebody. He had shot somebody. In his trunk, they found a whole bunch of meth. They found a bunch of assault rifles, and when they tried to arrest him, he claimed that he was a sovereign nation. So I've learned some lessons from expansion. That is one of my favorite stories, and it is so random, and I haven't had another webinar to tell that story, but here you are watching right now. And I say all that because, number one, just because you can expand doesn't mean you should expand. There are so many lessons to learn about that. Number two, even if you can expand, are you ready to do it? Is your foundation solid? Have you figured out those things? We want to say, why should we expand? And if the answer is to grab money and to feed my ego and because I want to be Ben Kinney, those are the wrong answers. If you want to expand because you have major opportunity in that market, you have the right person in that market, your foundation is solid, and you're trying to create an empire for that person, now we're talking. So remember, we're covering the who, what, where, when, and why. We covered the why. Why should you expand? Let's now cover when. When should you expand? After that foundation is built, I think that you need to do your due diligence on a market. I'll tell you this, and it's going to play into the who as well. Having the right market and the wrong person will ultimately lead to failure. Having the wrong market and the right person should lead to success. It's all about the hire that you make. We can say, when should you make the move? And that's, of course, you need to know the analytics of that market. You need to know the price point. You need to know the number of buyers and sellers. You need to know the supply and demand. You need to know all these figures so that you're doing your homework on a market, not just putting your sign in the yard and calling it good and saying, well, I'm here to do shop. No, you got to do more than that, gang. I think the big opportunity is not just in the where, or excuse me, not just in the when, but in the who. See, right now, I've shared with you, we expanded to Bismarck, North Dakota. It was introduced to me as a friend of a friend, and I had no idea she was even looking to get into real estate, but she had a career with the Army National Guard and was massively successful, making 6 figures and doing great things. And she came to me, and we chatted, we vetted her, and I didn't have many referrals for Bismarck. Remember, wrong market, right? Bismarck is Western North Dakota, and when you go to Western North Dakota, it's 200 miles away. Things operate really differently. It's kind of like a wild, wild west out there, and there's different rules. It's less predictable, and so we knew that the competition there wouldn't be as fierce, but also they don't take kindly to outsiders, and we had to take all that into consideration. And it wasn't necessarily a yes until we found Heather. Heather's our agent in Bismarck. And this gal, I've hired over 100 people in my career now. She might be my most talented. So we have the right person. And give me the right person and I'll figure something out. If you're thinking about expansion and if you've built your foundation, if then you're ready to say now is the time, the question is, do you have the right person? The right person shouldn't be the first person that raises their hand. I think it's really hard, not impossible. I think it's hard to find somebody that has sold real estate previously that now wants to come on a real estate team, because we have to take into consideration splits and expenses and risk and marketing. But here's how I pitched it to Heather is I told her, listen, it's going to be probably 6 months until you make a paycheck. We are going to set for you a lot of appointments, but everybody's going to hate you. Your competition is going to hate you. Your community doesn't take kindly to outsiders, you know, that small town mentality. We're going to give you all the support you need and then some, but frankly, you're going to have to go 6 months without a paycheck. And on top of that, your first year, you maybe you'll sell 10 houses. And it was the absolute capital T truth for Heather. Her first 6 months, she didn't sell any houses. And then her last 2 months of the year, she sold 10 and like closed on 10 houses in her first 8 months on the team. Now I had just checked, and through August, Heather had herself made about $60,000 in net commission. That's after splitting with the team. And we as a company are now making money on it. But I'll tell you, this is the first time I've ever made money that quickly in expansion whatsoever. It's really, really hard to make money in expansion. So those of you, we're going to take a quick pause because we have to talk numbers. It's imperative that you understand the numbers of how we function. You should have 3 buckets you pay yourself in. And I have a couple of my coaching clients on this here. So they've heard this before. And in fact, they've considered expansion even recently. So it doesn't surprise me that my buddies are on this call watching. But we have to figure out how we're paying things, because you need to know that foundation piece means you have to have a healthy, profitable business before you take a leap also. Not just have enough transactions. If you have enough transactions but aren't making any money, guess what? Expansion is going to lose you money. But here's the kind of money you need to pay yourself. First off is you need to be paying yourself a salary. And by the way, if you're going to hire an expansion director or somebody that is overseeing this, that person needs a salary too. Remember, I have 3 expansion markets. We're looking to grow a couple more in this next year. I employ a full-time expansion director. They get 50 grand a year, and they also get some profit share opportunities. They also can do some production in town. They're a licensed agent, so they have a few different ways that they can make money. But 50 grand a year is a salary. Fargo's average sales price is $230,000. So if you're going to pay, if you're going to have your numbers set up right, you need to be paying yourself a salary, and you need to consider additional compensation for somebody on your team. You maybe have to hire someone, because here's the mistake I made is I tried to be the expansion director my first time. And every one of those expansion team members felt like the forgotten stepchild. That is the most common story in all of expansion, is that they feel like the forgotten stepchild because they're not the first thought of you, they get your leftovers. And if expansion's ever gonna work, you can't just feed them your leftovers. They have to get the best of you. So in the buckets you pay yourself, you need to adjust your time if you're gonna be the expansion director, and make sure that you're giving at minimum 5 to 10 hours a week per market. Now, as you scale, that can become less and less because you're doing things together, but at minimum for your first 12 months of opening up expansion, 5 to 10 hours a week is given per market. So the first bucket of how to pay yourself financially matters a lot. That second bucket of how to pay yourself is you need to pay yourself a commission for all the deals that you do. If you're on a 50-50 split with your buyers and a 30-70 split with your sellers for agents on your team, when you do production, you need to take out that commission. The company will still get 50% or 70% when you do those deals, but you can't feed all of your commission to your team because you will not have a clear understanding of the profit that you actually have until you're paying yourself a salary and paying yourself commissions, just like you're paying everybody else on your team. That final bucket, remember I said there's 3 buckets. The first one is a salary, second one is commission, the third one is the profit that you actually have. And everybody has different profit goals. Everybody has different profit numbers. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book says that you should have about a 40% profit margin. I think that's unattainable with the team, unless you're in like a multi-million-dollar market where it doesn't take as many people to do what you're doing. I think a healthy profit number is 20%. My goal is to be 45% cost of goods sold, 35% expenses, and 20% profit. If I'm profiting at 12% or 14% or 15% and my goal is 20, should I be opening up expansion and considering it? Hell to the no. No, no, no. Hell to the no. Please avoid moving into expansion until your numbers make sense, and you need to know those numbers and you need to know them diligently. If you're at your profit number that you should be at, and my recommendation is at least a 20% profit after paying yourself in those other buckets, then you can consider expansion. All right. With that sidebar, we have the money now, and we're going to employ somebody to go into expansion. You've identified the right markets. You've identified the where. You've figured out the right market. You've identified the who. It's the right person, and it could be somebody who is already a licensed agent. I've had my best luck finding people that are not already licensed agents. A team value proposition of an aggressive split is hard to do. It just frankly is. And by the way, you might be asking, what splits do I offer these expansion partners? Well, I own my own brokerage, so there's no like split with the brokerage. But what we did, that's for my team in Fargo, but what we did do for expansion, because we knew we had to employ Connor, who's our expansion director, and we knew that it would cost us more money, we put a franchise fee of 10% off every transaction. That is the first cut that happens. After that franchise fee of 10% that goes to the company to help fuel our expansion expenses, we now have, we're on a 50-50 split, listings or buys. On the listing side, that's high. I mean, frankly, we're overpaying for listings, but we know the value of listings. On the other side of it, we're paying 50-50 on a buy, which is pretty standard. It would be commonplace for our agents, because we're going to train them really intentionally on how to work their sphere, that they're going to go ahead and make, I don't know, $100,000 in their second year, $50,000 or $60,000 in their first full calendar year. Those are about the numbers that we pitch, and we now can get predictable results with that. And they have to be killing some of their own too. It's not all company deals. See, in our world, in our ecosystem, we put a heavy emphasis on SOI deals, sphere of influence deals, because we have an ISA team that's setting these appointments for people. Our value proposition is not we're going to give you leads. It instead is we're going to give you appointments. And understand that vast difference between offering somebody leads and offering somebody appointments. They can go and buy leads, can't they? I mean, maybe they don't have the business savvy or the experience, but they can eventually buy leads. Setting appointments, that is a kind of savvy that people salivate over. Salivate, that felt nice. So with that being said, the value proposition that you have to have for these expansion agents, if you are going to recruit somebody that is seasoned, that is already licensed, that is experienced, has to be beyond leads. Here's what we have, and I'm going to go to my sheet here. Here's what we have for what our value proposition is. In fact, I'm going to do this. Let's share my screen because I want to share with you exactly what we're doing. I hope this is of value to you, and if you can see it, that's great. If you can't see it, please post up here. But I want to share with you our expansion director position, how we have it laid out. I'm even going to zoom in here. Banga, banga, boom. Here we go. 150. Grandmother eyes. Here we go. Okay. Our expansion director, this is essentially Connor. Connor's on our team. This is his job responsibilities. This is everything that he needs to do. And it's 3 key areas for expansion: support, profitability, and growth. It sounds really simple, and we have now cracked the code on it, and to the tune of, and I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. We've cracked the code because in our 3 expansion markets, we're going to see over 100 transactions come this year. And I think next year we're going to see about 200 transactions. And when we start adding that many transactions to our bottom line and to our ecosystem, we're now stumbling on a huge profit center for our company. Just this last month, our 3 expansion markets had very, very healthy months, and I made a net profit of over $40,000 in a month from expansion. That's crazy great money, but I can't tell you how many months I funded buying leads and paying for leadership and paying for MLS dues with no transactions to show for it. The net I have for this month does not reflect the losses I had going in. Frankly, I would say that you need to be prepared to take losses for 18 months before you start seeing a profit. The fastest I've turned a profit is 12 months in a market, the fastest. The slowest I've turned a profit in a market, well, I can't answer that because we shut down the market before it ever came to it. So understand these numbers. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit here because I have so much passion about this, and I'm just excited to regurgitate everything I have. All right, so support, profitability, and growth. Take a look here. Onboarding and training. You have the right person. How are you not just hiring a warm body to fill a seat, but instead treating them as though their business matters a lot? Onboarding and training, you have to have a system and a strategy for that. What kind of marketing do you have to have? And let's pause on marketing for a moment because this is a really hot topic. Are we branding in Bismarck, North Dakota, Hatch Realty? Or are we branding Heather Matson? See, in Fargo, my face is on everything. I'm like Colonel Sanders. I put my face on everything. But that doesn't carry any clout in Bismarck, North Dakota whatsoever. And so we use the brand of Hatch Realty, but it's Heather's brand. They don't know who I am in Bismarck. They only know Heather. And in fact, in her first year, she's been with us like a year and a half now, she just got voted by the local newspaper readers as the #1 agent in the area. Had I branded it as Hatch Realty and nothing but Hatch Realty and the Erik Hatch Show, Heather has nothing to do with it except for she sells some houses, like we do our teams in our own hubs, right? And that works in your hub because I have name recognition and clout here, but it didn't make sense in Bismarck. And the reason why she got recognized on such a high level is because we marketed the bejesus out of her. Both she's doing it with her own SOI and through her own social media, and then we're doing it in the community in pretty great droves. We're doing it through buying Zillow leads, and we're doing it through a lot of retargeting ads that we use through YLOPO. We're purchasing a lot of pay-per-click leads through Sierra Interactive. Those are really the ways in which we are marketing well in those areas. I have tried radio in expansion. I didn't have luck with it. I haven't tried TV. I haven't tried billboards, but everything else, what works with us at home, works in that other area, wherever you're expanding to. Radio is a really expensive medium, and what do you know? It takes not only somebody else saying you're great, but you have to have a track record too for people to believe it. Okay. Listing services. We make sure that we're providing listing services for all of our expansion agents and expansion partners. In fact, we call them our partners. I only use the language expansion internally. Externally, it sounds subservient, doesn't it? It sounds like it's a second thought or an afterthought. We call them our partner markets. We don't call them expansion markets externally. Internally, we do, but externally, we're using different language. We call them our Bismarck team, our Grand Forks team, our Detroit Lakes team. We, of course, provide them transaction coordination and continued training and coaching. This is the 5 to 10 hours a week from the rainmaker or from the director. And that is, again, for every market. Profitability, oh my gosh. There are so many different ways to factor profitability. And I think you're gonna have to probably sell 20 homes in about an 18-month period to start turning profit if you've invested like we've invested in this. And what we are doing is we are tracking the numbers, meaning we're tracking salaries of our transaction coordinators and our listing coordinators and all the expenses that we're putting in there. In fact, on our P&L, each expansion market has its own category. We're monitoring and treating it as different. And that's a huge takeaway for you too, is that you shouldn't blend this in with your regular P&L. This is a separate budget. This is a separate line item, not even a separate line item. It's like a different column in your P&L. You have an expansion P&L, and then you have your home base P&L. You shouldn't marry those two together unless you're trying to get the overall picture of the health of your company. But you will make some short-sighted decisions on either of those places based on not having those fully understood and separated. I hope that makes sense. Gang, we just have about 10 or 15 minutes left, so stay with me. You're doing great. Let's talk about growth. We, of course, have growth as a part of what we do and how we do it. We don't ever want to just say stagnant. We love that Hatch Realty is a chance to be impactful in some major areas. Now, let's do some quick math. Okay, we're gonna pause here for a moment. We're gonna take a little break. And in this break, I want you to do some quick math for me. So pull out a paper and a pen if you haven't done so yet. The average agent on your team, if you're in Fargo, North Dakota, you're gonna answer these for yourself, but the average agent on my team here has an average sales price of $230,000. At a 3% commission, that's $6,900. Let's say now they're on a 50-50 split, so that $6,900 now is cut down to $3,450. How many transactions do I expect out of that agent? If I expect, I don't know, let's say I'm going to get 30 transactions out of that agent. 30 is a good number to get out of an agent. We're going to do $3,450 times 30 deals. That's $103,000 in what we think is profit to us. That's the commission cut that agent's going to make if you're on a 50-50 split. They're going to make just over 100 grand, but that's their net basically. We're going to gross 100 grand. If that's the case and we're going to gross 100 grand, what are our expenses? We have bricks and mortar, which most of us have. We have admin and staff. We have purchasing of leads. We have our own salaries. We have insurance. We have. And again, remember I said that the profit number goal should be for larger teams about 20%. If you can profit more than that, hallelujah, praise Jesus, you're doing what very few people are actually doing. And 20% of all of this, of $100,000 of gross to the company, 20% of that is $20,000. That means that each agent on your team, if they're doing 30 transactions, is worth $20,000 to you. Pause on that just a moment, because I know there's some other coaches, there's some other webinars that are saying that every hire you have is like $1 million hire. And to treat them that way and to put that kind of training and emphasis on them matters a lot. However, please understand that you're not making a ton of money off of your team members. Now, if that person goes to 40 transactions or 50 transactions, and then they bring in somebody else under them, and now they've been working leads over and over and they have retention for long periods of time, now your profit margin is growing exponentially. My profit margin will be up 300% from where it was this time last year. And the reason why is because of retention and because of keeping people around and because we now have a higher value than just $20,000 per agent. I hope you understand the point I'm trying to iterate to you, and that is you need to see the numbers of this once you have identified the right who, and understand that you won't get rich on expansion immediately. The money doesn't randomly show up and poof, now you find yourself in Profitville. If you're going to grow, growth is expensive, growth is messy, and you have to play a long-term game if this is ever going to make sense. Because yeah, I have agents that make me $20,000 a year, but that agent is going to make me $100,000 a year in 3 years because they're going to build an ecosystem and a structure. And that's what you're doing in expansion is you're really building another market center. You're building another hub. That should be the goal, is not to have 1 or 2 agents to pick up random leads and instead to build something big. Because if it's just the random leads, it's just a $20,000 person. If it's a hub, that hub can make you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year. Ooh, I'm fired up now. By the way, this document I'm showing you, I am going to include with the email we'll send to you after all this. So that is a great gift. I'm going to skim past all this. I want you to know the responsibilities of those that are leading expansion, because this is robust. And if you believe that you can just hire somebody to be in expansion, you send them a few leads and they're going to succeed and they're going to stay with you, you are radically wrong. Your value proposition has to be higher in expansion than it is in your own hub. You have to have more things figured out than you do your own hub because you don't have the proximity to figure it out. Proximity solves a lot of problems and you don't have that with expansion. And if you ever want it to work long-term, you have to answer more questions than you are for your own hub. I'm getting preachy here. Okay. So specific roles and responsibilities, as you can see right here on the screen, it is a lot, a plethora. One-on-ones and role play and meetings and additional meetings and trainings and you name it. This is a long list. This is what we're doing though. This is how we're paying our expansion director, Connor. He's going to make some good money because we're actually turning a profit now, but it's taken 2 and 3 years to turn a profit. Finally, the last piece I want to show you here is that we have graduation milestones so that they have a roadmap to what it takes to graduate. Again, you don't need to try to write this down because I'm going to email this to you. Or if you're watching the replay of this and you're interested in this, go ahead and make a comment and we'll send that to you, no problem whatsoever. So you can see all these things. It is not an easy venture. It is not for the faint of heart. I don't recommend expansion for most people. I think expansion is an ego play that doesn't make you money. I think expansion is a bad idea for most people, period, bar none. If you don't have your crap figured out at your own home base, why in the world would you go somewhere else to try to figure it out there? More transactions with a bad foundation, that doesn't solve your problems. Having a strong foundation, having a strong profit center, having strong leadership, having strong people in those positions to help. If you can do all those things exceptionally well, and then you can answer the real why of why you want to expand. And it's not because of your ego, but it's instead for the desire to make an impact and to give somebody else an opportunity. And you've tapped out of some opportunities in your market. Here's the example is we're going to sell with our team between 800 and 900 transactions this year, biggest year we've ever had. And in Fargo, that gives us a market share of about 8 or 9%. Super cool market share, right? To have 8 or 9% is exciting and fun. I'll tell you this as simple as it comes is I think that most markets, I'm a mid-sized market, 250,000 people in our area. Most markets, the most market share you can probably get to is about 15% in a mid-sized market. In a large market, let's talk an Atlanta market. My buddy Mark Spain is in Atlanta, and he does like 2,500 deals a year just in Atlanta. He's doing 4,000 with all his expansion markets. 2,500 deals in Atlanta. It's hard to keep opening up shop elsewhere. So 2,500 maybe is the biggest you can get in an expansion market or in a large size market. But in a small market, Chad Schwindeman, a buddy of mine who is over in Brainerd, Minnesota. The community is like 70,000 people. It's not big at all. Chad will do 800 or 900 transactions a year, and he has like a 25% market share. So in small markets, I have another friend, Renee Mueller. She's down just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. In her little community, she has like a 70% market share or 80%. I forget what it was because it was just so staggering. So you can have really big market shares in certain places, but you have to know a point where you can't milk that any further and you need to go elsewhere to find more opportunity. You need to go elsewhere to find it, but you shouldn't abandon your own hub when you've already had years of momentum and years of progress and years of growth to go and chase after the new shiny object. You do this wrong and it'll bankrupt you. Period. Bar none. I've seen it happen time and time again, and people chase after expansion because of ego, but ego doesn't make you any money. Michael Carter made a comment here. Michael, thanks for the comment. He says, going through ESO, that's Expansion Systems Organization. I think that's what it stands for. It's a KW class. It was the best thing that ever happened to his business. Learning and understanding what you're getting yourself into and the difficulty of expansion should hopefully scare the bejesus out of you. If you still have opportunity, if you're one of those rare groups that can see that there's still meat on the bone and money to be made and an impact to be had, if that's where you find yourself, I'd love to help you figure out expansion. So with that, I have just a couple of things before we wrap. Growing a team is really, really important, and lead conversion is really, really important, and training and onboarding is really, really important. I think those three things of leadership, lead conversion, and onboarding, if you master those three, you're going to have the biggest world possible. We at Hatch Realty and Hatch Coaching have taken all of the things that we've done and we've made training modules for it. So I'm going to send you some information on something that we're calling Hatch Training. It's video training modules of how to build a real estate team, of how to master lead conversion, and how to train and onboard exceptionally well. It's just a monthly subscription. If that's up your alley, that's huge. Otherwise, we have a bunch of things in our marketplace, classes, and other products that'll really help you grow and go. And if you are going to take the leap for expansion, make sure you're trained well. Don't figure it out like I had to and just get smacked in the face 1,000 times by branches. I used to be beautiful. I had a bunch of hair and those branches smacked it right out of me. So now we find ourselves trying to share it, trying to get the word out. And if you're interested in the Hatch training package, we'll send you those links. There's some huge things. You can buy those classes individually. It's just a monthly fee, or you can buy the whole bundle and save a bunch of cash. So with that, a few of you watching are coming to Fargo next week. We're having our coaching summit. So excited. We have about 165 people from around the country coming to hang out. It's going to be huge. We can talk expansion more if we need to. But otherwise, if you have questions, comments, whatever it may be, please let me know. And the last request I have is to please sign up for our YouTube channel, Hatch Coaching. We do content weekly at minimum to continue to try to rise the tide for you. So with all that, God bless you. We kept it to 45 minutes. I feel like that's a championship material time. Have a beautiful day, and don't expand unless you're ready.